On Monday, June 21st, the MLB actually enacted their new foreign substance rules, including requiring starting pitchers to be checked for substances at least once every game. They also check relievers upon entry or removal from the game. Now, these rules have caused a lot of backlash around the league, especially concerning one instance when Max Scherzer for the Washington Nationals was checked not one, not twice, three times in one game, and one of the times, the last time, coming in the middle of an inning. Now, Chris, I want to start with you, and I just want to get your thoughts on the sticky substance checks that are now going around the MLB.
Oh man. Mike, thanks for coming on first of all to lead us in this discussion because I don't know where I'd start it without you. I mean, what a packed debate to enter, just how widespread the usage was. It was like teams were teaching their players to do it. And we're at the point now where the MLB has dropped the hammer, has come down with the decision, and they did so in a manner that I think really flexed their muscles, like power wise. They just said, hey, this is what's going on starting on this day. And they didn't, to the disdain of the pitchers, really work with like the players on the solution. They just kind of came down and said, this is what's going down. This has led to injuries. One of my own New York Mets that I root for, being one of the victims in Pilar. I mean, pitchers being unable to control the ball or as it slips out, like, it is clear to me from the rollout of this mandate and the subsequent just reaction from various pitchers, the injuries caused by the pitches flying loose due to there not being anything that sticks in between the ball and the hand. You can effectively label this a mismanaged scenario by the MLB, in my opinion, just because of the fact that even if the idea behind their mandate is correct, they executed it in a way that was not as organized as it should have been, and that led to multiple player injuries. So as someone who doesn't have the strongest take either way on the actual use of sticky substances, I think there is a difference between your famed, infamous, I will say, sunscreen and rosin combination and then like spider tack. I just think the way that this was handled, the way that this was done swiftly, was intentional so that the backlash would be minimal. But now there's more backlash, and I think it's completely valid in regards to the injuries this is causing and this widespread of a change happening as quickly as it did.
Yeah, I have a lot of like mixed feelings about this. So on the one hand, I'm like, I support the fact that the MLB is trying to cut down on like cheating, and I feel like that's a really strong take, and I like it and I appreciate that. On the other hand, I think that it's been totally mismanaged. We talked about this like way in February. Like this kind of came up then. But they didn't institute any actual rule back then. And then suddenly mid-season, now they're changing everything up. So I feel like that is definitely a problem within the management of this whole situation. And I also think, I mean, okay, so in the Scherzer case, it was Joe Girardi who kept calling for these checks. And so, of course, my team, love, support, whatever. But I also feel like there does have to be a management on it. You can't just call for checks all the time. I mean, there has to be some sort of checks and balances to this system so that teams are not abusing it just to get in pitchers' heads and slow down the game a little bit. And like even more to that point, MLB has been trying to make their games faster for so long. They've been trying to make things like more engaging for the fans, a faster paced game, something that people are really into. And I feel like this mandate is counterintuitive to that. I feel like it actually is slowing down the game. It's kind of creating more drama, which fans are not necessarily like buying into. And I think that it's just, they're kind of losing their like old timers who love the sport. And they're also not drawing in a new and younger crowd through this management and like through this role. So I think that for them and from like a marketing perspective, this is going to hurt them more than it's going to help them, because old timers who love baseball are going to think that this is inflicting on, I don't know, like the core of the game, which is like sticky substances on pitches. And then like new timers are going to be like, now we have to sit here for longer and wait for like 3 checks to happen on the pitcher. So in of itself, yes, I like the idea of minimizing cheating, I guess, but in practice, I feel like it's not working.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because first off, this has like been a rule for years upon years that has not been enforced by the MLB. I mean, there are infamous examples like Michael Pineda with the pine tar on the back of his neck and stuff, examples like that, that there have been the league coming down on players for it, but they've been few and far between. And this has really been something that's been widely used across the league. So when you shift mid-season, you put guys at risk because the way they throw is dependent on these substances, even though that's not a good thing. That is an example. I mean, Tyler Glasnow is a perfect example of this. He was saying how because of he can't use these substances anymore, he has to change the way he threw, and then he ended up he has to get arm surgery now. So he's a perfect example of one guy that has really fell because of these new rules by the MLB.
Garrett Richards. My favorite example. Just really quickly to get into his situation, this Wednesday, he gave up 4 runs in Mike. Does anyone have a guess as to how many innings if they don't know, or play a fun little game? 1.2 innings. He gave up 4 runs. This is, of course, a Red Sox pitcher. So not the worst for New York sports fans, but Richards is a pitcher who said that baseball needed to prepare for 4-hour games if they went through with this rule change. And some things that Richards has said that I've seen on Twitter, honestly, that I found really interesting were that he made this point that pitchers aren't hitters. Oh, that's really obvious, right? But let's delve into that statement a little bit, right? Hitters, you can go out and hit 2,000 balls in a day if you really want to put the time in, spend all day outside in the heat. You can get a lot of practice in a short amount of time. Pitchers cannot, their arms can't do that. And for them to have to, he used the term different pitcher. He has to learn how to be a different pitcher. Now with the change, and he's someone who has only ever even just implied that he uses sunscreen. So no admissions from Richards, but the mid-season factor to me, Mike, is fascinating. And Kayla, I don't know how you feel with your team about just this stuck, pun intended. We're stuck right now in this period of transition.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we're just kind of at this awkward part right now where, like you said, like mid-season, this came on all of a sudden, and it is dangerous to these pitchers who have not had proper time to adjust. And so while their spin rate is going to be a little lower, so it's like, on the one hand, I think that we have to like really define what we consider a sticky illegal substance, because I think that there are certain things that, like you had said, like spider tack and maybe like pine tar, that they're too much. Like that, it helps you get way better of a grip on the ball. But then there are other things that should probably be allowed just to like support safety and to allow for some control on the ball. And so I think that like the MLB has indicated no clear guidelines between like they just keep calling it a sticky substance, but like what type of sticky substance is actually the problem here? Like what are they actually trying to outlaw and what are they actually trying to make illegal? And so I think that there's just so much ambiguity and vagueness, I don't think is a word, but there's a lot of like vague guidelines about it. So
I think I might be the master of creating words on air. So no worries at all, Kayla, because that's it's become like a hobby of mine on air. Like what are the most ridiculous words I can create? I completely agree with you. I think that the fact that conversations can be had about how the MLB handled this is all the evidence you need that they didn't handle this as well as they could have. I mean, if we're sitting here mid-season talking about like why they stopped cheating, something's gone wrong probably. And I think you can to oversimplify, trace that back to just the normalization of the sticky substances, and now you're gonna yank the cloth from underneath the table from all the teams at once. You did it successfully. You're holding the cloth. It's in your hand. You have it. The sticky substances are gone. The problem is that you've left hundreds of plates and glasses and utensils in danger. Some of them literally shattering, talking about Mr. Kevin's face on my Mets. Yeah, some bones literally shattering as a result of this midseason change. It does not have the organization that it should have. It was not executed with the vision that it should have been. There's absolutely no way that the top decision makers of the MLB did not sit there and go, something's gonna go wrong here. No, this will be totally. They knew what the outcome of this might entail, and they went through with it mid-season anyway, which absolutely, in my opinion, gives us the rein to criticize them, whether just as fans or as media, for this approach. I can't believe that they straight up endangered their own players. This is not like, we're not talking about some, like, oh, the NFL's product is different now because no. The MLB is like physically endangering their own guys, and they're totally fine with it because it's stopping cheating. I'm not moved. I'm not moved by this movement to stop the sticky substances. I find myself sitting here saying, like, we should let pitchers keep using stuff so long as that stuff is regulated. And I don't know how the MLB couldn't have come to that conclusion themselves after that time of deliberation, because it took me 5 minutes to come up with that plan in my basement. And I don't even, I got nothing else. I can't believe that they're doing this.
Yeah, I think one thing that's another thing people are missing on this is that every single pitch and every single time someone makes contact in MLB, there's a new ball that's used. And I mean, a lot of lower levels of baseball, like, you'll see pitchers like, oh, like, umpire will offer a new ball and be like, no, I want the ball that was there. Because, like, the dirt on it, all these things, like the scuff marks, make it easier for a pitcher to grip it. And when pitchers are getting a new, fresh ball with, like, the seams in the MLB were basically, like, barely off the ball, I mean, it's hard for these guys to get a good grip, and it's easy for it to slip out of their hands. So a lot of that also has to do that. I mean, the baseball's become a sport now where, because they're using baseballs all the time and pitchers can't use it, like, it wasn't like that before. So it's not like you can compare it to the old days. Like, I think pitchers have harder time getting in grip now than they might have had in the 1960s and 70s, which is a very difficult thing for them. And I think there's also, the only thing that's been missing here is that I think that the hitters and the pitchers are being a little too sensitive around this issue. I mean, hitters had juice balls as of at least 2019 or 18. I mean, they've had it their way for a while. And then on the other side of it, pitchers were complaining about the juice balls for forever. So now suddenly, when they're getting cracked down on their own thing, they're really sensitive about it, saying that, oh, you can't change this or that. I think that MLB just needs to come out with a definite thing on both of these issues. I know juice balls is kind of different, but there's a lot of these non-baseball factors that are ruling the game now, and they need to figure out definite rules on how we're going to make the baseballs correct juice-wise, and how we're going to allow pitchers to use certain substances that provide them some grip. Because I know they're in talks of making a substance that can help the pitchers with grip that isn't sunscreen combination or spider tack, but that's yet to be seen. So hopefully they can make a decision on this at least entering next season.